Mother Ganges. This river supports 400 million people. The river is believed to have curative powers. It can wash you of your sins, bring you closer to God. But of course, there's a great paradox. They don't think they can actually hurt it because it is a god. They said the river is sick, but it is still God. I wondered what would happen if we took a river that was actually believed to be sacred, that was actually believed to be a goddess or part of a living entity that was part of religion. The Ganges River is 1,550 miles. It supports 400 million people and is believed to be sacred by 1 billion Hindu. So we decided to follow the river, start all the way at the top as far as we could go. This is basically the epicenter, 21,000-foot Shivling Peak, which is believed to be the center of the universe in the Hindu world, where Lord Shiva came down and slowed the river from the heavens to the earth through the locks of his hair. We decided to go past Shivling, which is in the back, all the way to the top of the Gangotri Glacier, into the Garhwal region of the Himalaya, up near the China and Pakistani border, where we weren't even allowed to bring satellite phones. They were afraid they're using them for terrorism activities. So 3 of us came up to this very remote region in an attempt to climb this peak right there. Chakumba 4, never climbed before, 22,500 feet high. This is a little out of my climbing range, to be honest. Well, these 2 guys, Jake Norton, he found Mallory's body on Everest. Dave Morton, he's guided all 7 summits. Combined, they've stood on the top of Mount Everest 9 times. Seemed like pretty good company. I was actually a little nervous they were just going to drag me into anything. And we got up to the top, 18,000 feet of the Gangotri Glacier, and we were getting prepared to start climbing this unclimbed peak. We were going to do water samples up at the top, and an unpredictable monsoon pattern rolled in. Jake could detect it hours before it happened. I was like, what are you talking about? The weather's great. And sure enough, this weather started rolling in. At 4 p.m., it started snowing. It snowed 3 feet in 12 hours. Did count 36 avalanches, counting through the night, which a mix between thunder, artillery, distant drones, and someone banging a drum over my head. So we packed up our tents, we had to leave much of our stuff, and basically fled. Hiking out with no trail down a glacier with heavy packs is challenging, especially when you have to fight it through 3 feet. In retrospect, we left our ropes, which maybe wasn't the smartest thing as we were crossing a lot of crevasses, but we were challenged. It was either tent or ropes. What are we going to do here? So we came down and negotiated safely through some of these crevasses and made it back to the safety of this little tiny ashram, this place where a guy named Silent Baba lives. It's at 14,000 feet. Silent Baba is a really interesting guy. Many believe the further up the Ganges you go, it is more sacred. The river is believed to have curative powers. It can wash you of your sins. It can bring you closer to God. Well, Silent Baba decided he's going to go all the way to the top and live up there at 14,000 feet. And in addition, to prove that he's that devoted, he's not going to speak anymore, so he doesn't talk. And if you look at his front yard, basically, below Shivling, you can see the wild ibex leaping about and jumping across. This is one of the spots that I took a water sample. I'll show you some of the water sample data as we move downstream. So unfortunately, these guys are big sponsored Eddie Bauer athletes. They were bummed we didn't climb. I was somewhat secretly relieved that I didn't have to go up that mountain. And we negotiated our way back down the Gangotri Glacier. It took us 4 days. And to give you an idea of how powerful this Ganges River is, there was a glacial outburst from another one of its tributaries that literally tore through this area called Uttarkashi. And you can see how populated it is once you descend out of that upper Garhwal region. It killed 6,000 people. And then once you leave the very upper highlands of the Ganges, you come down to this remarkable dam, the Tehri Dam, the largest dam in Asia. Very controversial, mostly controversial because if this river is God, and you dam a river that is God, you dam God, what becomes of God? Is it still sacred? So many ask that on a spiritual level. It also submerged 40 villages and displaced 100,000 people, but it does produce 200,000 megawatts of electricity. which is very important in a developing nation, of course. Just downstream is Dev-Prayag, a very spiritual place. Officially on a map, this is where the Ganges starts. The river on the left is the Bhagirati, that's the source river, that's the river we went up. The river on the right is the Alaknanda. You can see the difference between what a dam does and what a dam doesn't do. On the right is the natural hue, the sediment carrying loads, etc. That emerald green again, clear water coming down on the left because of the dam. When you get below Dev-Prayag down into some of the more populated foothills, this is around Rishikesh and Haridwar, you start to see the real love and adornment of the river. This is called arti. It's a daily ritual in the Hindu culture where they come to do offerings and sing songs and offer flame, which equals light, which equals humility in front of your gods. And they basically come out every single day at 5 o'clock and give this river a group hug. And it's beautiful. It's really beautiful. But of course, there's a great paradox. They don't think they can actually hurt it because it is a god. Or they may do offerings that are unaware that they're putting plastic in the river that's bad. So the people that adore it are also partially killing it. Now, just to give you a flavor, some sights and sounds of arti, I'm going to play you a short video. I'm going to keep moving you downstream, try to get us to the end of this river. Remarkable river when you get up in the air, but to give you an idea how hard that is in India, helicopters and aircraft are used for the military only. This took me 2 years to get this flight, but you're able to see from the air kind of the beauty, the marvel of the Himalaya, and as this river descends and through the terraced and populated areas. I mean, to think this river supports 400 million people. And we wanted to do something different too. I wanted to document it and try to raise awareness, but I also wanted to do some testing to prove, people claim it's the most contaminated river in the world, and what is the situation with this water? How bad is it? So we brought some water testing devices. This is actually in front of Agra, in Agra, in front of the Taj Mahal. Many people, maybe some of you have been to the Taj Mahal, but nobody goes out here. This is the most putrid river I've ever stepped my foot in my life. I mean, it was garbage and crap everywhere, and there was a half-eaten dead monkey floating by me. Nasty, nasty water. And they do say that the Ganga Jal, the Ganges water, is powerful, it's curative, there's something special about it. And I'm like, really? We need to figure this out. As early as 1896, the British were actually putting cholera bacteria into Ganges water, and it was dying. So the Ganges had a power to it, a curative power that was in fact unusual. But here in the Yamuna River, this is what our data showed. This is the oxygen, dissolved oxygen content. If you're above 8 on a river with dissolved oxygen, which all the species and plant and flora need, you're a healthy river. Well, right there at Yamuna in front of Agra, it was 0. Basically a dead river. And just to give you an idea of what happens on the inverse, we tested for 21 heavy metals. This was one of just the higher ranges. The yellow line is the safety line for human interaction. So of course I was standing knee deep in a river that is just laden with zinc, just one of the many heavy metals that was high. So not a healthy river. But what's interesting is the oxygen level came back. You saw that dip, it came back up. So somehow this river, on some level, is restoring itself. We jump back over to Kanpur, where you see people, of course, treating the river much like a laundromat. Nobody was swimming here in Kanpur. They said the river is sick, but it is still God. First signs of fishing we saw, this is in part because we start coming into the Muslim religion that's mixed in the section of the Ganges here. By Hindu religion, they're all vegetarian and they won't fish or allow it, but in this area we saw some fishing. And then we also wanted to see some of the industry. Kanpur was basically built as a textile town by the British, great access because of the Ganges River. So this is a leather tannery. There are 400 running tanneries in Kanpur, and they produce 8% of the world's leather supply. Much of us are probably wearing the leather that goes to our fine shoes. Most of it's buffalo, some cow. Yes, the cow and buffalo are sacred, but if you're not Hindu, you can work in this industry. When you're in a tannery, this is one of the cleaner ones. They're actually following protocol. They have to recycle their water now by government. 70 tanneries were shuttered down by the government, but it is one of the most toxic places I've ever been in my life. This was like walking into a bottle of ammonia. My nose almost exploded when I walked in here. And they're basically bathing it in this heavy metal called chromium, which is a very toxic, very nasty heavy metal. Creates lung cancer, liver failure, kidney damage, premature dementia. And in 2013, they did a study that they're basically pumping out 79 million gallons of contaminated water into the Ganges around Kanpur. And they only have a capacity to process 45 million gallons. So only half of their water is getting cleaned. This is a worker outside of a tannery trying to bathe himself off, and he's kneeling on basically a pancake of dried chromium. Outside, the kids are playing a gleeful game of cricket, the national sport, and they're playing on a field of chromium-laden leather scraps. It makes me think about my leather shoes in a whole new way. Like I said, we tested 21 heavy metals. I just want to give you an idea of what it's like at Kanpur, where the tanneries are. That's chromium. It spikes right off the roof, even with all the new recycling that the government's trying to do. We moved downstream, Indian traffic jam. Very typical. India is a spectacular place. It's so rich in humanity. Practicality sometimes and functionality doesn't always work, but it is overcome with humanity. It's really wonderful. We moved into Varanasi. It is one of the oldest inhabited cities in the world. People have been living here for 5,000 years. Again, one of these arti ceremonies. Varanasi is considered sacred. They perform arti in sacred cities. Again, fire equals light equals humility, people coming from the banks to watch it. And then just downstream, you can come here to pray, and around the corner, people come to die. All this work and a bunch of essays I wrote were published on the National Geographic magazine Proof blog recently. I'm just going to read you the opening sentence of the blog that went with the Varanasi story. When you step off a wooden boat onto the banks of the burning God in the oldest of India's cities, and you weave through a maze of funeral pyres, hissing, steaming, and spitting orange embers into the inky night. And you feel the metronome clang of bells vibrating inside your chest in a wave of furnace-like heat, consuming everything in its reach. You realize how removed you truly are from the ritual of death. That was the most run-on sentence I've ever written in my life, but I liked it. That was in the evening in the Burning Ghat. This is in the morning, back here at 4:30 in the morning. Very challenging to get access. You're not supposed to photograph here. It took me 3 days to get access. Very powerful place to be. You see the goats eating flowers, the doves. That's a femur bone. These are all the ashes and bodies that have been burned. And the belief is that if you are burned on the banks of the Ganges, and in Varanasi specifically, and your ashes are thrown into the Ganges River, which you're seeing right here, that's human ash, that you will achieve a level of moksha in the Hindu religion. And moksha means you'll break the cycle of birth and rebirth. You will not come back into this world. You'll not come back as a cricket or a cow or another human, whatever. You will actually go to heaven. So many people actually will come to die in Varanasi. It's that important to them to reach heaven this way. And one challenge, though, of course, is burning all these bodies uses a tremendous amount of wood. It can take 1,100 pounds of logs to burn one large body. 50 to 60 million trees from the Himalaya are getting cut down. You see them getting barged up to the Burning Ghat here. Very complicated situation. And of course, this is a very common sight when you get further downstream. This is just 200 yards from the Ganges, just a very typical drainage. Of course, it stems much in part from the Ganges is God. I mean, the Ganges is going to clean itself. God doesn't, big deal if you pollute God. God is all powerful. God is, however you perceive it. We moved further downstream, all the way to Patna, a place few people go. And of course, we left the crazy monsoon storm with 3 feet at the top, and we entered into a cyclone. We figured, what the hell, we got to make it to the end, though. It was raining so hard, my eyelids were peeling back. I felt like I had a sandblaster on my face. It didn't stop these guys. These guys are out celebrating at full tilt a festival called Durga Puja, good over evil, and they built these big statues of their deities, and they bring them down, and of course they offer them to Ma Ganga, Mother Ganges, offer these offerings to the god. Of course, the river is bigger now, it's got a bigger current, it's wider, but all of these offerings just sort of float and collect on the banks. And many of them have lead paint and plastic and whatnot. They're not all biodegradable. Further downstream, we moved across into Bengal, the last state on the Ganges. Durga Puja continued and raged through the night here. All the villages were building their statues and come and giving an offer and putting ghee on their mouths and then carrying them and then throwing them into Ganges as a great offering. In Calcutta, on the southern edge in the Indian side of the delta, we've now come about 1,500 miles. This is one of the main shipping lanes for Calcutta, and a very typical scene. You have somebody praying, somebody drinking water, somebody washing their hair, somebody collecting sacred Ganga Jal that they're going to bring back to their village. Now back to our water data. This whole concept of the river coming back to life is interesting because there's a thing they're calling the X factor. They believe it's related to bacteriophages, that if all these people are coming to the river every day and they're treating it like a bathroom, why are they not getting sicker? Well, the oxygen level does return, and oxygen actually helps to support these bacteriophages which eat bacteria. And that's one theory why these epidemics, cholera epidemics, haven't occurred with 1 million people coming for certain festivals and whatnot. So there is some element of a curative power to this river. And after 6 weeks, traveling 1,550 miles, roughly 3 vertical miles, in theory, we were free of sin because, believe me, I did wade, walk, swim, fall in to the Ganges many times on this trip. Yes, I was free of sin and I was free of 35 pounds. I lost a bit of weight. It's a good weight loss program. We reached the Bay of Bengal at Sagar Island, where you can come give an offering to Ma Ganga, to the river, to this pack of stray dogs that all are related. So there's the Ganges, just to give you a little overlay of the locations and the water testing. This is the heavy metal testing. You see some heavy spikes on the Yamuna River, which is basically flushing out New Delhi and all the industry there. Agra, of course, is the lower part of that. So it somehow digests a lot of that heavy metal input and puts it at bay to a degree, but it's not going to last. Now, the new Prime Minister of India, Modi, has actually budgeted, and this is very new, it's very recent, $340 million to clean up the Ganges. So there is some hope. There are people listening, they're paying attention. This was some of our other testing. Nitrates are very high at the top of the river. That's probably blowing in from China, from fertilizer. You can see the temperature basically steadily drop, and this is oxygen, the main one. So you see the river try to come back to life, which is unusual, but it turns into nearly a dead river at the end. But I want you to remember not the river for its data or its contamination. I want you to remember it for its sound. So I have one more India video. It's just a minute and a half long. So all the water in our rivers and our ecosystems, our water table is very limited. And no matter whether you live in Washington, D.C., or you live in Colorado, where I do, or you live in India, I like to urge people that I think all these rivers and all our water systems should be sacred because they all are scarce. Thank you very much.